From Chicago's CAN TV, this is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome to Chicago Newsroom here on CAN TV. I'm Ken Davis with another conversation about, things that are going on in our city. And we begin today with a little sermon. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here today to mourn the loss of a company. It wasn't a big company, but in its short life, its accomplishments were stellar. And even if you never heard of it, if you never used its product directly, it helped shape the way you perceive your home city. DNA Info was born in Chicago in 2012. And in almost no time at all, DNA hired a couple of dozen reporters, editors, tech folks. They built a website that was filled with thousands of local, some call them hyper-local stories about Chicago and its neighborhoods. And that's the reason we want to talk about DNA today, because as the media structure keeps changing, the first thing to go is those small stories, the little stories, the ones about neighborhood disputes over a proposed development or a city service, even the opening or the closing of a beloved neighborhood bar, restaurant, something like that. And a lot of us fear that when that source dries up, all of journalism begins to kind of wither on the vine. But as good and useful as DNA Info was, it remained a company owned by just one very wealthy individual. And when Joe Ricketts didn't like the fact that his workers in New York's office decided to unionize, he just shut the whole thing down abruptly a week ago today. And on today's show, we're going to talk with two people who both worked there early on, but went on to co-found a different kind of media organization that incorporates community into the journalism they produce. And maybe somewhere along the line, we'll find something out here that is enlightening to all of us. I'm talking about Bettina Chang. Welcome to the show. And also Daryl Holliday, who's been here many times, multiple times before. Glad to have you back, Daryl. Should we begin with just, a little bit of gossip about DNA Info? I mean, it was pretty spectacular for its little short life, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really devastating to hear what happened because we both worked there and so many great journalists worked there, both young and old. And I think, right when it started, they were known for being this young newsroom of kids who are not kids, but, younger people who just were willing to give everything to the site and work all day and do this stuff because they cared so much, and it was there was just so much energy.
Yeah, I mean, back in my day, people got nostalgic like that about the City News Bureau, that it was a very similar kind of thing. And a lot of the people in the baby boom generation who ended up having great careers in journalism, they all put in their time at some point in the City News Bureau. And that was the whole point, that you had to hang around the cop shop, or you had to hang around the emergency room, or in community meetings and take notes on the things that are going on. And then that feeds in to the bigger stories, but it just all went poof.
And there's a line there to draw too. I mean, I began at DNA Info in 2012. I was among the first batch of reporters.
Were you there at the beginning?
Yeah, at the very beginning.
I didn't know
Actually,
that.
before it even launched, we were working on the Murder Timeline, which was the first big project designed to cover directly and intentionally every homicide in the city. So I began my career in journalism in that sort of City News Bureau model where, I was at the morgue every night, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
At
And
every
you were doing that.
Site of every shooting, And now that we're working on City Bureau, there's a similar line to draw there. City News Bureau, City Bureau, sort of this training ground for the future of journalism, the future journalists.
Yeah. So when did you start?
I started, I would say in 2014, I think. They brought me on to do breaking news, to be a breaking news editor. So I worked 2 to 10 at night, and I was there, I was sort of the backstop on a lot of the stories, all the stories that were left over from the day before, getting them ready for the next morning. And because of that, I was so lucky to be able to interact with a huge variety of the reporters. Most of the reporters there reported specifically to one editor, except for at night when it was just me in the office by myself, hanging out with the cleaning lady.
Just you.
And,
Covering
me and the news
big
on TV.
city.
Yeah. But I felt really lucky to be able to work with so many of those writers and just be able to hear how much they loved their neighborhoods and how much they cared about the sources that they were talking to, and making sure that the story does justice to the people who were willing to talk to them for these things.
Yeah, there was a snide comment made. I can't remember who it was now, but I remember reading somebody, I think it was on Facebook or somewhere, saying, it's really too bad the 10 o'clock news never covered the fact that DNA Info just got murdered. And then somebody else said, well, that'd be the first DNA story that they didn't rip off in the last 5 years. Because, you know, I mean, it was an informal arrangement, let's say. But let's face it, I mean, every news shop in Chicago was looking at DNA Info to see what happened last night or in the last 24 hours.
And in the early days, that would piss us off because we were not getting the credit of being a legitimate organization. We're like, oh, DNA. And yet, they turn around and just take every story. So DNA was, I mean, doing a lot of the unseen work.
How'd you like the Sun-Times editorial yesterday about DNA? Did you see that?
The one that was about Colin Kaepernick as well?
No. This was one that it was just strictly about DNA, and it starts. Now I'm grossly misquoting, but it starts something along the lines of, you know, one of the first things we would do every morning is check our cell phone to see what was going on.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
this is the editorial board of the Sun-Times. And they just gave this really wonderful tribute, just listing things like, you know, the woman who had the twins in the Red Line station, and a number of other things like that they would never have been covered by the Tribune or the Sun-Times. They don't have the resources. Ironically, this little startup run by this billionaire in New York had more people on the ground and had more ability to cover the real incipient stories in the city.
Well, and they had the mandate. You know, they were told like no story is too small, and I think you really have to credit the leadership inside the newsroom. You know, like the editors there, specifically Seamus Toomey and Jen Savell. They're just like so. I think they sort of like made sure that there was this like air like an aura of like cover everything. You know, why not like. One of the first stories that made me really laugh and think like, wow, this is like a new thing that Chicago never had before. I had a friend who was covering Lakeview, Serena Dye, and she did a story about literally there was a parking space in Lakeview where whoever parked in that space woke up in the morning and the car was just covered in bird poop. And they emailed her and they said, hey, like, why is this happening? And she covered it because the editors told her, like, everything
Everything
matters.
was popular.
It was extremely popular, and you know, like people cared, and that is not something that, you know, like if you're sometimes a reporter, a Trib reporter, even if you want to cover it, you just
it
can't. Wouldn't get in the paper.
I mentioned at the beginning that one of the things that DNA really got nailed for in the early days was, they just cover a bunch of bar openings and closings. Well, you know what? That turned out to be one of the most interesting things about it, because I found a bunch of little local places right up where I live that I would never have known about, but you know, they're covered in DNA. And I think that is that's like covering the neighborhood, the fabric of the neighborhood. These are the things that hold neighborhoods together.
Right.
And I was always just so impressed with the fact that those guys got it. They really kind of understood that.
Yeah, I really felt it. I think yesterday I read that there's a restaurant that might be moving into our neighborhood, and I was like, where? And it turns out that another restaurant that I really liked is closing, and I was like, how come I didn't know about this? I walk by it every day, and I thought back and I was like, the reason I don't know about this is because I'm not getting my DNA newsletter anymore in the morning.
Right. And I think we're all beginning to have that withdrawal. And it is interesting how I've talked to people who say that, you know, they were getting to the point where they were spending like, you know, 20 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day just, you know, reeling through all the stuff in there. Well, anyway, I mean, it's gone now, and it's not, I must say, a surprise that it's gone, because the guy who owned it made it very clear that he would never permit his shops to get unionized, and the New York people decided to test that, and they unionized, and within a week he just shut the whole thing down all across the country, which is what he said he would do. And this really comes to what I think is, I don't know, I get very emotional about this stuff. I get very excited about this because I really care about journalism. I really care about reporting and telling stories. And as much as we have joked for the last 10 years about the way to solve journalism, the way to save journalism is just get a billionaire, right? I mean, look at the Washington Post. The Washington Post has come from almost nothing almost a completely dying operation to a thriving operation because they got a billionaire who's willing to do it, right?
And it could be nothing again if that billionaire decides
Within
to
an
pull
hour.
Yeah, so I mean, we could talk about DNA and what it did all day, and that's fine, but what's next? I mean,
Right,
we need
exactly
to figure
right.
out ways to get people to
Right.
appreciate and pay for this kind of thing.
Right.
If you read the Chicago Reporter or a City Bureau or any of these nonprofit outlets, but you don't support news, like, get serious. This
Yeah.
is not about business models. This is about a public good, and how
Yeah.
do we support that in
Yeah.
our city?
I think we've talked before about, the kind. I always like everything I know about life I learned from being a gardener. So it's just kind of like if you plant a monoculture of all one kind of plant, and then some little insect comes in, it's all going to die in a week, and your entire yard is dead, right? You have to have diversity, and that's true in human interaction and everything. Diversity is the key to everything, and diversity of funding is really critical. So I like the fact that you guys have, from the beginning, with your organization, with Chicago Bureau, you've really been trying to get some of the big guys to give you some money, get some of the little guys to give you some money.
That's the ecosystem we want to see here. I mean, that goes directly to your point. We need a vibrant and lush media ecosystem in Chicago, and that's going to involve individuals who put in $1 a month or $10 or $20, and also these foundations. We're a nonprofit, so the MacArthur's, the McCormick's of the world, who are really thinking critically about how to return that money into a system that supports democracy.
And you've had
public
luck
interest.
with that. You've had luck with getting foundations to give you some fairly serious money.
Yeah. I mean, we're not a big organization by any means, but we have 2 staff members.
You have half the organization in your newsroom right now.
Yeah. So I mean, we could be bigger with more and better funding, but we're really focused on getting people, the everyday person, to care about journalism and to make it so that we don't have to rely on foundations or the Joe Ricketts of the world. We can be accountable to you, to all of us, and we build the media. So yeah, it takes a lot of work, but we have been successful in the effort so far.
So tell me a little bit of something about the structure and the vision of the Bureau, the Chicago Bureau. I mean, you're doing all of these. Well, you have like your Documenters program. You have the Chicago Tracker Project. These are things that are very idealistic. And they strike me as being really labor intensive.
Well, City Bureau was built on this idea of the media ecosystem, right? Like when we talk about like having a diverse like culture of media in a single location, it is not just like what does City Bureau give to its readers. Like it is a network of people, a humongous network of people. Some of them are journalists, some of them aren't. Some of them are teachers, some of them are just like live near the newsroom and come by. And our mission is predicated on this idea that we're going to involve as many people as possible, right? Because the more people who understand how journalism works, like who understand that when you cover a bar opening, it's not that easy. You have to confirm with multiple people. You need to make sure that they have a proper lease and a proper liquor license.
It all looks so easy, doesn't it?
Right, exactly. And so our idea coming through was that, if more people know how it's done, that's better for professional journalists, because then people can value the work that we do.
Which, I mean, I want to push back a bit on this, like, it's idealistic. I really don't. I think it's actually very practical. I think this is the kind of news that is needed, or else we get the results of.
When I said
the DNA
idealistic,
dropping
I was being complimentary because I like idealism.
I
but,
mean,
yeah.
I'm hopeful. I'm idealistic, but I mean, really, what I value is the practicality of we are structured and we have a plan and we're trying to accomplish a thing.
Right.
But I mean, yeah.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Tell me about the plan. I mean, I like the idea that you have these programs where you have a kind of a more experienced person working with a couple of people who are really right from the neighborhood.
Right.
And I mean, so how does that work?
Yeah, let me go through, I'll be quick about the programs. We run 3 year-round programs. One is a reporting fellowship, where we bring what we call emerging journalists together with more experienced reporters. They work collaboratively, and that content gets produced across various media outlets locally and nationally. Our public newsroom, we open up our physical newsroom space in Woodlawn once a week, Thursdays from 6 to 8, and bring in community members, activists, journalists, academics to talk about what is new and interesting in their work and in their lives and share that, like hands-on skill sharing. Those conversations, they're, I think, cathartic for some people. Some people are not used to having journalists come and say, really, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah,
You know, what do we need?
What's the story?
What's the story?
What's the news? Yeah.
And so that's every single week, consistent. And the last program is our Documenters program, where we pay and train people, anyone, to go out and document public meetings. Right. So think the Chicago Police Board, City Council.
Right. And then to live tweet it if in some cases.
We have them live tweet sometimes. We have them fill out meeting templates so we know who was there, what were they talking about, what are the issues that were raised.
One of the conversations that has come up in the wake of DNA is this thing about, it's sort of like it's the embryo of news is board meetings and just the stuff that just bore the crap on you, right? I mean, they're just awful but they're so important in other ways. So, you know, in Chicago, you know, school board meetings are kind of exciting because there's always a lot of controversy and there's fireworks and everything.
But LSC meetings aren't always
That's
exciting.
Exactly where I was going with that. But you know, there's 400 or 4,000 schools or whatever it is, and every one of those schools has a story.
Right.
And what we need is 10,000 documenters who are everywhere all the time.
I want to see that. Join the Documenters program. We can get 10,000 documenters. That's a feasible, doable thing.
But you have to pay them, you said.
Yep.
And how does that work exactly?
It goes back to, so our funding, I mean, we're thinking a lot about revenue streams, which is
I'll bet
really,
you are.
yeah, right.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Right now, it is majority foundation support. We just launched our membership program, which is, you know, for $8 a month, a Netflix account.
Yeah.
You could be supporting this kind of journalism, this newsroom. So we're looking to build that out. We have 60 members in the last 4 weeks. What if we had 100? What if we had 1,000? Can we support a newsroom built on people, regular people?
It's an intriguing question because my old employer, WBEZ, is now up to something like 86,000. I only know that because I hear them bragging about it on the air, but they've got 86,000 members.
But it's a tiny, tiny portion of Chicago's
That's
population.
right. But it tells me that there's 86,000 people out there who are willing to pay for something that they could get for free. And that is probably the most encouraging thing of all.
If you can make the case, right? Like, what is the value proposition? What is, I mean, when you see DNA disappear, I think then you say, whoa, this can just go away. How do we make it so that it can't?
Right.
That's
and
right.
when we're developing our membership program, you know, first of all, we didn't just create it and say like, here, give us money, right? Like, we created the bones of it, and then we hosted public meetings to bring people in and say, what do you think? Like, is this worth it to you? And what they told us overwhelmingly was yes. Like, yes, I'm happy to pay for this thing, not only regardless of whether or not I can get it for free, but so that other people can get it for free. I think there's a huge population of people out there who understand the value proposition or are willing to listen if you tell it to them the right way and you talk to them like they're people that you care about, and that you can show them the things that you do, like show us the receipts, right? Like, you need to say, I showed up, you know, like, look at where all of our people are and like how much we care, and people will take that on and be like, yeah, this is a value to me in my community, and it's something that, you know, if it were taken away suddenly, I would be upset about. So that's the proposition, and we call it a social contract because it really is. It's more than just like, here, give us this thing and paper will land on your doorstep. It's not like that anymore.
That's right. That's exactly right. And, you know, I've been in enough meeting rooms and, you know, administrative conversations over the last 40 years about the intractable problem of why aren't there more voices from the community? Why aren't there more minority candidates that are available to come into our shop and work and all that? Well, this is perhaps the most logical solution to that problem that I've seen, because what am I trying to say here? You're asking, where are these people? Why aren't they in the pipeline? Well, they're not in the pipeline largely because the pipeline involves getting into a journalism school. It involves having a level of education or whatever it is that you have to take 3 or 4 steps before you can take that first step.
And pay a lot of money, most likely.
And pay a huge,
amount of money.
That was implicit. Yeah.
And
we should
be
be really
willing
clear
to
about
not
it.
be paid, right? Like
Right,
to know
right,
that you
right.
have like a limited salary ability
That's
once,
exactly
once
right.
you graduate.
And many of these are people who just absolutely cannot be not paid because they have to work just to live. So this is the answer. The answer is to say, if you live in the community and you're somebody who is interested in the community and want to be civically engaged, here's a way. Come down and we will help train you. And this just picks on so many scabs for me. There's just so many things that I get really annoyed about, which is, and one of them is this idea that, that you have to. Well, never mind. I'm
I was about to
all
get into it.
Yeah, let's
yeah. Well,
that scab.
it's that thing about you have to go through all these hoops. You have to go through and get this certification, and then at some point you reach a level of defined competence that makes you available for Channel 7 to bring you in as a free intern, right? But the real truth is that people who have these interests are out there. They're just not able to latch onto that first rung of the ladder. So I have said so many times to people, don't go spend $80,000 of your parents' hard-earned money to go into a journalism school. It's not going to help you. This is something where you can give your time and put yourself into it and get trained by people essentially for free.
Leveling the playing field and democratizing the skills that journalists have and use every day and giving them out to people
Yeah,
to do practical things.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, we always say, people talk about journalists have the power, like media has the power. And for us, for City Bureau, we think like, if we have that power, why would we hoard it all to ourselves when we could give it away to all these people who can do amazing things with it?
So how do people get involved? We're getting short on time. So as journalists here, so let's get to the nut graph here. How do people get involved in this thing?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way, go to our website. It's citybureau.org.
That's pretty hard. That's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's pretty easy. The next way, if you want to come in person, which we love, come to our newsroom at 6100 South Blackstone on a Thursday night from 6 to 8.
Is that every Thursday?
It's every Thursday. It's not tonight because we're doing a 2-hour presentation in about a half hour, but it's every Thursday. And then the last way, which I think is really pretty key, is become a member. That's citybureau.org/press-club. Press Club. Come remember the Press Club.
Yeah, we make it really easy to get involved because we want as many people involved as possible. You can stop by any Thursday. You can sign up to be a documenter, and it's free, and you actually get paid to do it, which is a pretty nice perk.
It is.
And you get to learn things, and you get to, most likely you'll be able to go to a meeting that you would have gone to anyway, and you get to participate in a way that's so hands-on and creates value for your community.
Do people actually just show up at your doorstep?
Yes.
Does
At
it
the
really
public newsroom
happen?
all the time.
They just come in and they say, I
All
want to
of the
learn how to
time.
do this?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, I always thought people would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you make the space and make it
Right.
safe and
And it
open
is, I have
and
to say,
welcome.
it's a beautiful space that you guys have.
We do love
down
our
there.
building.
Yeah,
Experimental
yeah.
Station is a wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful place.
Yeah.
And our friends at Build Coffee do a good job making sure we're all caffeinated.
Right. So just like paint me this picture. So it's Thursday night, and people just come in. I mean, but you have I don't know what you would call these people, but sort of like mentors, right? I mean, there are people who you can get attached to, who are going to walk you through this.
We're interested in sort of building this pipeline where the baseline level is on the ground. Anyone can come in. Next levels are documenters who have been around for a bit, reporting fellows who have been around for a bit, ourselves as the management staff. These are all people who, once you're in, can guide you to where you need to go based on your interests. We can have conversations. But yeah, people show up all the time, new people that we've never seen randomly to get the trainings.
And then
And
at
the public newsroom, it's always a guided workshop. We bring in somebody to lead it, and you can come based on your interests. So like we had one a while ago about using video games to tell stories.
Yeah.
Like that tended to attract more people who are
Yeah.
interested in games. Or we had Tanika Johnson, a photographer from Englewood, to talk about what does it mean to tell the story of your neighborhood. And so we got a lot of people who are interested in that issue. And so like it's very like cross generational. We have people who are like 16 up until like 80 coming
That's
in.
very cool.
Yeah, and it's just a very welcoming environment, and that's what it's created to be. That is the point of having this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people should do this.
Yeah, we'd
People
love
should
to
do
have them.
ChicagoBureau.org, right?
Citybureau.org.
Chicago Newsroom City Bureau, whatever. Yeah, okay. Yeah, citybureau.org. I was just thinking that it's coming to the end of the half hour, and I have to say you can watch all the shows by going to Chicago. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
having
Thanks for
us
having
on.
us, Ken.
Yeah.
You know you'll be back.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
you
love being
know
here.
that's another thing too. We did the thing with your guys who did the water series, which was again kind of community reporting. It was really
That's the
really
kind of work that people can support by becoming a member.
and
It
they can
goes
see all
directly
that
to
too. Yeah. All right. Okay. We got to go. You got to go. You got things to do.
I gotta go.
I know. Daryl's anxious. He's got to get to work. All right. Thank you very much, Bettina.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Ken.
Daryl. Thanks
Thanks,
for
Ken.
being with us today.
No problem.
I'm Ken Davis, and you've been watching Chicago Newsroom here on CAN TV. It's a production of CAN TV, and you can watch us doing this show and all the others anytime by just going to this address right here. And we hope you will. And we hope you'll join us again next week. We'll have another program for you. Next week, we're very proud of this. We're going to be talking about the Harold Washington legacy because he died 30 years ago, just in a few days, the anniversary. And we'll have the City Council floor leader, and we'll have a key member of Harold Washington's staff, and some journalists, and a bunch of archival tape and stuff, all for you on the show next week. So please try to watch it. There'll be one show next Thursday, and there'll be another one on Thanksgiving Day. So we got a lot coming up here on Chicago Newsroom. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.